Use my affiliate link to support the channel down in the description. Hey, what's up guys? It's MetaGamesGX here, and we are going to be doing a new video on the top 10, really just going to be talking about 10 of the best budget decks that you can run this format, in a format where the best deck if you want to compete is a fire deck that costs about $1,100+. So unfortunately, a lot of people are being priced out of the game, but there are a lot of other options that you can use to compete on the edges and still even claim some wins here and there, obviously, and do well, because Yu-Gi-Oh! At the end of the day is still a game that Konami has publicly said they want as many decks to be playable as possible. So you still see other decks still topping here and there, obviously each event. You just have a gravity between the fire decks, branded and voiceless right now. And so we're going to be talking about the 10 best budget options in terms of decks that really just cost below $200 to make for the most part. So at number 10, we're going to be talking about Heroes. Heroes is one of those decks that actually topped Nats last year, and it is a deck that has always been there. It's one of those combo-oriented fusion decks that plays straight into Nibiru. However, they're able to set you up with a, their own in-house just gimmick lock with Dark Angel, essentially, with and then you're also able to set up things like Dark Law and DPE, which really is pretty hard to get through, on top of a favorite contact blowing up your whole board. And this deck really does cost not too much money, so I think that this might be your best option if you like the heroes from the anime and want a cheaper deck to play. Number 9, we have Sky Striker. Sky Striker is actually still a little bit budget here, with even new amazing support coming, and with with Engage potentially coming back to 3 like it did in the OCG. I think this deck only has room for improvement, so I think investing in it right now is actually a pretty smart decision, and it's not even that bad. You can take it to a locals, break a board here and there, and win the tournament. You still have Linkage, who came out, and then you also have the new Link monsters, so the deck's good enough. You have number 8, you have Plunder Patrol. Shout out to Plunder Patrol. Check out the second place deck profile that we uploaded of our mod wheels. As you guys know, this deck was really good in cash format. However, it kind of fell off after that, but it's still one of those really budget options that you can take in and still compete at a pretty high level. The deck is quite explosive once you learn the combos and get going. At number 7, we have Rika / Arrow Mage. Now, this might potentially actually be higher on the list if we see more tops, but Rika was a deck that kind of got neutered by the ban list with Lokai and their other link going to 1, which really stops their grind game. They're only able to do their combo up until a certain point now. But the Arrow Mage support came out, which also actually synergizes very well with the Rika support, them both being plant support, and they even get some fusions now. So I think that with this, you've actually seen a couple tops here and there. You see Sunseed Jess, in the lab with this deck, so I think that you could actually see this deck go higher on this list depending on the things, but I wanted to keep that in mind for people who like plant, and it's actually quite cheap right now. Like, everything in the Rika deck is fairly cheap, so pick up Rika cards if you're ever interested in playing plants in the future, because God knows plants will be good once again. So at number 6, we have Yubel. Yubel is actually kind of budget at this point. There's still a lot of cards in it that aren't quite budget, because all the fusion monsters are now going up to $20 each, but all the super rares are still fairly budget, and you still just have to get super polys, and just the Unchained cards aren't too much. So I think Yubel overall is actually a fairly decent budget option. It is on the more expensive end of the budget options. It is able to contend, and I think it does get a lot better, and that's why you see the cards going up. So eventually the deck will just keep going up in price and will no longer be a budget deck, but for right now is somewhat budget. Especially, you could just splash in some of your cheaper branded cards and just have a branded Yubel deck. Number 5, we have Chimera Illusion. Now, Chimera Illusion might actually be one of the best decks on here. I think Chimera Illusion is one of the best budget decks. This deck costs like under $100 to $150 to make, and you can run the branded engine on top of it, and all the cards, really, you get to hand rip, you get to make Guardian Chimera every turn, you get to make Dragoon, you get to run a bunch of non-engine. The deck is actually still very good, and you still see it getting tops here and there, so I think that it will get even better with the support in the next set. So I think that this is a decent pickup for right now, and a pretty good budget option. At number 4, you have Sword Soul. Sword Soul is that tried and true deck that's always been there every format that still manages to get tops. Shizhao with Baron Pass with Blackout is still one of the best boards in the game, I guess, frankly, to make on a consistent basis that will allow you to just still steal games and, go into tournaments. And this deck is actually running Shifter in this format sometimes too. So this deck can adapts with the times, and because of that, you've been rewarded with having a Sword Soul deck this whole time, being able to have a meta relevant deck, and it's still very good to this day. Number 3, we have Labyrinth. I think Labyrinth is actually pretty budget right now, all things considered. You know, Labyrinth right now doesn't have a great Fire King matchup, but outside of their Fire matchup, they have very good matchups against all the other decks. So once the Fire decks go, this deck will be back on top. Labyrinth is also untouched by the ban list and will arguably not get touched on the next list too, because it's been doing basically nothing. So I think this is a pretty safe investment. If you've ever wanted to play Labyrinth, now is the time to do it. On top of that, it's a very good deck. It's a very competent deck. This deck was getting YCS wins prior to this format. It's just having a bad Fire matchup, but with people trying out other decks and also just with a ban list looming, I think Labyrinth being able to go big welcome, rip 2 cards, and then also be able to loop things like D-Barrier and Daruma Cannon, and also just Stovey Torby on top, still being a thing at 3. You know, being able to go Eradicator. This deck is just devastating. Multiple different ways to run it. You can run the trap version or the better gas version nowadays. It's very good. At number 2, you have Fire decks without Wanted. So I think that you can actually be running Fire decks without Wanted and Bonfire and still see some success. What you could do is run pure Fire King, or you could be doing more what people have been mostly doing is super heavy Snake Eye, which is this build where you really run the super heavy cards alongside the Fire cards. I've also seen Tearlament Fire. There are definitely a bunch of different Fire brews that you can run without the Wanted cards that you could still actually just tech in with your decks and still see success. The best one would be Volcanic FTK. You see Volcanic FTK, which is just one of the probably the best Fire deck without Wanted and Bonfires. It uses all the Volcanic cards, none of the Wanted cards, and it uses all Fire cards, and you can basically just FTK your opponent. Volcanic just being a really amazing card deck, even if you can tech in Horus with it. So definitely a thing that should be contended with. And if you want to play Fire, you know, there's still some budget options there. You would just have to be more choosing or sparing with what you would have to do. So number 1 at Flunderies. I think Flunderies is actually the best budget deck in the game right now. You see people like Ryan Fletcher who is saying the deck is insane, and you know, you see this deck also. Ryan Fletcher, who has gotten multiple YCS tops with the deck. On top of that, the deck is very good in a graveyard-based format. This is a graveyard-based format, so that this deck really already has an advantage there. As long as it can do its thing, it's going to get through a tournament and rip you a new one. So I think that Flunderies is also just a very cheap deck. It's probably not going to get on the ban list unless you get to play Shifter and Prosperity at 3. It's really crazy. Sorry, you get to run Shifter at 3. It's a really crazy deck on top of Featherstorm still being a legal card, just basically being a hand trap floodgate for your opponent. And then just Dreaming Town also just being a blanket Book of Moon. You get to run Daruma Cannon in your deck, and then just of course M-Pen just being a broken floodgate. So and with a lot of people either running board breakers or hand traps, it really just like a Flunderies could just run a whole tournament. This budget deck is going to be Stun. You have multiple different variants of Stun. You see Asian Persuasion and his team, you know, him topping YCS Indy a few months ago, and then also just still taking this deck and publicizing this deck. And you see a lot of people on DB Ladder running this deck and being successful. You see people just taking this to a regional. I think someone just won a regional the other day with Stun. This deck is usually only $150 to $100, so this is definitely a deck that if you want to terrorize your locals and not make some friends but also get some free wins, this is certainly a deck that you could run for under like $150. So with that all being said, what was your favorite budget deck? What deck will you guys be running? I hope I presented some options that will allow you to play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, at least for the time being, on a level that will make you enjoy the game. You should be able to win games against Fire decks with any of these decks by any means. So with that being said, make sure to leave a comment below. What did I miss any decks? And if you guys want to see another list on the top 10 board breakers this format, leave 100 likes down below, and we will be seeing you guys later. Check out all the links below. Make sure you subscribe. Road to 4K subscribers. Thanks to all our channel members. See you guys later. Did you know that I have channel memberships now? This is the best way that you can support the channel and get some awesome perks. You get access to the hidden Discord group chat, where you get to ask me any questions about your decks. You get early deck lists, some early videos even, and exclusive emotes to use in the YouTube chat. And you get to duel me once a month. The best part is you get to support amazing branded and Yu-Gi-Oh content going forward. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for the memberships down below. Thanks for watching the video.